So Jim Bianco from Bianco Research has 6 questions. First one, six questions I would ask Powell, which of course he will not answer. Why did this happen? Why is the 10 note yield change not reflecting the rate cuts we just discussed? Mortgage rates aren't coming down. Right. So
Right.
we would expect that's one of the reasons why they wanted to cut rates in order to unleash demand within the consumer economy. And one of those assets that people would be buying. The idea is that we have all this demand on the sidelines to buy houses. Lower interest rates would cause people to buy more houses and unlock equity and all that sort of thing. But it's not happening. Third, I know you think inflation has either been defeated or is about to be defeated. So why did the market react this way after you cut in September? So inflation expectations are higher in the future. 4, you cut rates because you were concerned the economy was slowing. Then this happened. So why are we cutting? So the Bloomberg U.S. Surprise Index is showing a major increase in as a leading indicator for growth within the U.S. economy. Fifth, if you insist on cutting more, where will you stop? Well, this is about the neutral rate, so we won't go down that path. And finally, here, since you cut rates in September, both easier financial conditions and new stock market all-time highs have ensued. Why do we need more cuts to encourage more easing of financial conditions? All very good questions, right? If things are going well in the economic sense for the metrics that the Fed pays attention to, low unemployment rate, higher growth. What's going on? Why would they be cutting in the face of all this? At first, the argument was like, oh well, maybe they're being partisan, right? Before there was like, oh, maybe he's cutting rates because he wants the Democrats to have a better, higher stock market or better economy, and blah blah blah, to help them win. Then the narrative changed to maybe he wants to get on Donald Trump's good side because he thinks he's going to win, so he wants to be on Donald Trump's good side. And then he gives him a big FU at the press conference. So I don't know what to think here. Why on earth is he cutting rates? Do you have any idea?
I guess my take is that their plan was to slowly start tapering back interest rates, that they have reached the goal of the PCE index that they were hoping for, and that now it's just this slow tapering process backwards. I do find it interesting that the futures market is predicting about a 65% chance of another 25 basis point cut on December 18th, but then potentially the largest probability for January 29th right now is that they'll remain at that next target rate of 425 to 450. So I guess there is some question around whether or not there will be continued cuts throughout all of 2025, because I think that's been up for debate. And it seems like even Morgan Stanley's team has waffled on this subject, but it probably could be just delayed, where it's not right away. They skip a meeting, they pause at the next one, then they cut 25 basis points, and they pause at the next one. So it seems to me that, as always, they're guided by the incoming data that they have available to us. It's really difficult to tell what the long-term horizon of this looks like, because that could change in the next meeting, depending on the impact that the Trump administration has on inflation. So I guess it is a really good question as to whether or not they respond in the correct direction, depending on where inflation goes from here. What I'm hearing from the market, though, at least this poster you show on Twitter, is that people would prefer they just stay where we are right now, because we're not entirely certain where inflation is going to go over the next year. So why cut at all? Why not actually anticipate that inflation will rise and respond appropriately from there? That is a very good question. I honestly don't have an answer. I don't pretend to be an economist, and I certainly don't pretend to be as smart as the governors on the Fed. So it'll be interesting to see how they respond.
So let me paint you a Peter Schiff picture, okay?
Okay, go for it.
So we had the inflation spike after the COVID crisis because of supply chain disruptions, right? It was a cost plus inflation, rejiggering of things. What was their need to they charge more for it because there's less of the supply, and then there's no expectation of getting anything new from abroad, and so prices go up. People then overbuy, right? wholesalers and retailers overbuy in order to try to get some stock through. So they might buy 2, 3, 4 times what they need in order to get it through, and then and so that the supply chain is completely all messed up, and then you have rise in prices. Okay, so that's the cost push inflation. Well, what happens down the other side where we have essentially with this, if the Republicans get the House, then you can imagine that the full suite of plans that the Donald Trump is talking about, closing of the border, deportations, tariffs, tax cuts, deregulation, is going to cause a massive demand for growth locally while restricting outside imports or dissuading outside imports. Well, that's also going to be a disruption, but in a completely different way. There's going to have to be rejiggering of supply chains or of goods and services developed locally, which again is another inflationary cost. An anecdote for this is I don't know how true it is. You never know if anything online is AI, but there's this company, this post floating around with a company had a meeting with their employees to talk about the Christmas bonuses, and they said, "Well, we can't give you the Christmas bonuses this year because we're going to have to buy as many of our materials as possible now, because when tariffs come on, they'll cost more later on. So we need to spend that money now. Sorry, we have to prepare." And the employees were like, "What do you mean? Tariffs are supposed to lower costs for no tariffs." The Americans pay the tariffs, so we have to plan for that. And so it's almost like we don't even have to wait for the tariffs to actually come on. The anticipation that they will come on will change the behavior of the market participants, and that itself might be inflationary or at least disruptive in an inflationary sense. And that's one thing for tariffs. You start knocking off jobs, you start knocking off, you start lowering the income of the government because of tax cuts. You start deregulating, so there's more market participants, and you get a whole jumble of volatility that may or may not be good in the long term, but in the short term, how does that not, with the Fed cutting, how does not cause a massive demand for liquidity, a massive influx, a massive repricing of things like we haven't seen before, and we're not even back to 2% or below 2% inflation rate. And so all of this to me says 15% inflation next year or the year after. Like, I don't see how that doesn't happen.
I'm not sure I
That's
have
my
a bet on
doomsday
this,
picture.
but we do have a betting market to test the market's interpretation of this. If that's one thing we could pay attention to on Kalshi, it would be where inflation might be. I believe they do have an inflation market, right?
Oh, that's so funny. I didn't even check there. That's such a good idea to do.
Yeah, inflation in November, CPI year over year. So there is a market for it. It doesn't appear to be well traded though, but it is a really good question, and I'm curious what the market thinks about this now that we have these event contracts to kind of pay attention to trader sentiment, if you will.
That's right. And obviously, we still have gold and the dollar and sulfur rates and all that. Perfect. Okay, so all right, it's fair enough. I just wanted to get it on the record here that whatever you think about the Republicans, because I've been saying this since the beginning, both the Democrats and the Republicans, both their plans, even though they were different, were both going to be inflationary because no one's talking about cutting. Everyone has money spent in a completely different way. I saw the news the other day. They were like, "Oh, how much? It's going to cost like $80 billion to deport the immigrants." They're like, "Okay,
Yeah,
fine,
I think his correct comment was that he had there's no cap to the budget that they would put into this.
right."
So, okay, this,
So no matter who, left or right, everyone wants to spend money like crazy. Okay, fine,
right.
I get it, but we're
Even
going to pay
while we
for it.
have an insane deficit at the moment. Got it. Okay.
That's right.